Pan's Labyrinth is a film that cuts back and forth between two different worlds, one full of fantasy and another of war. I think based on the costumes, the dialogue, and even just the scenes, we can conclude that this movie was set during the 1940s, possibly in rural Spain. At this point, World War II had been going on for a while, but the war had kind of turned a new tide and the end was in sight. I think it might be really easy to dismiss the real world setting of this movie just because it includes so many fantasy elements. But I really do think that Del Toro, the director, created this dynamic war filled environment to almost force Ophelia to escape it by entering her fantasy realm. The violent world of the adults in this movie is very important to the development of the story because ultimately, Pan's Labyrinth is a story of war told through the eyes of an 11-year-old girl who battles her evils of the fantasy world, kind of similar to how the rebels battle in the real world war. I also found it interesting that this story is set in a time where women are almost inferior to men. But the women of Pan's Labyrinth serve as almost a new archetype, like a princess who writes her own fairy tale. And as the audience, we get to witness this firsthand through strong female leads in both the fantasy world and real life, thanks to Ophelia and Mercedes.
We've mentioned before on previous episodes, just the tone of the script and the pace of the dialogue can give the film a whole new vibe. In this film, Pan's Labyrinth, the film is shot in different lightings, which represents different theme points in the film, low lighting being the real world, and high lighting being the fantasy Ophelia created. Although the film was mostly shot in low lighting, which helped highlight other themes like war and rebellion in the real world. Without saying much about the setting or time period, just the script, scenery, and acting says enough. Just the loving interaction between the housemaid Mercedes and Ophelia, the historical and realist acting style Captain Vital brought to the film, and the adaptable and different acting style of Doug Jones, who played the Fawn and Pale Man. The script and actors of Ophelia tell a lot about the film, and the feeling editing can give makes that really come to life. I genuinely think this film was a beautiful play on so many themes, culturally revolutionizing. Although Ophelia is a young girl, this movie isn't centered around children, but actually is more catered to adults. What is good, what is evil, and what can be considered innocence? These messages regarding good and evil are really meant to prompt us to think, and I think that's exactly what the editing does and really helps bring to life.
Director Guillermo del Toro is a Mexican director who specializes in horror films. He specifically wanted this film, The Pan's Labyrinth, to be in Spanish to not compromise his artistic vision for the film. A pan or truck shot is often used to change the scene by using a wall, a tree, or the floors to pass through, whether vertically or horizontally. This allows for the storyline to continue at a constant rate without interruption and a smooth plot line. You see these types of shots when the captain and his forces are traveling through the woods or when Ophelia shifts in or out of the fantasy or underworld. Another common shot used is the point of view shot or over the shoulder. The director intended for this movie to be in Spanish and wanted to minimize the confusion of who is talking, when they're talking, and who they're talking to for his foreign audience. Whether that is true or false is debatable. However, it does help to keep things organized. It also allows the audience to see what the characters are seeing and have an emotional reaction for ourselves. Like the scene with the road or when the monster with the eyes in his hands is coming for Ophelia, we as the audience feel the same fear and panic. Sometimes it switches from a point of view shot to a close-up shot to allow us to see how the character truly responds. The editing techniques in this film was superb. Danielle, what do you think about the costumes in the film?
The costumes and makeup of this film do a great job of immersing the viewer into the experience that is Pan's Labyrinth. Although the film has a large element of fantasy, the genre leans more towards magical realism, and the costume and dress help to mold the two themes together. On one hand, there's an element of realism in the film. The film is set during the Spanish Civil War, a real-world event, and the character's attire is appropriate to that setting. The soldiers wear neat and proper uniforms, while the peasants they're supposedly looking out for are left wearing rags, subconsciously leading the viewer to understand the importance the military has in the country versus the citizens. Captain Vidal also wears his uniform frequently, and his no-nonsense attitude is reflected in the orderliness of his dress. His eyeless face, sagging and sallow body, and large stance all contribute to being off-putting and scary. What's great about the film's wardrobe is that they're able to put the two aspects of fantasy and historical fashion together in a way that doesn't appear jarring or cheap.
I think those were some really good points. I also think music was an important part of the movie that I will dive into a little bit more. So music is an essential part of this movie that really helps the audience feel the dualistic light fairy tale theme and the more dark, ominous theme of the movie. The music in this movie also did a great job at relating to the main character, Ophelia, and helps us feel what she felt. This movie opened up with the jovial lullaby hummed by a woman. This conveyed a childlike mood and matched with Ophelia and her curiosity. As the movie went on, this same lullaby was also used to convey a darker mood of entering the world of strange creatures and monsters. This was done by putting the lullaby in a minor key. We can hear this lullaby throughout the entire movie and know that it's connected to Ophelia since it was linked so well to her at the beginning of the movie. The score composer, Javier Navarrete, used the lullaby as a motif in the movie and did a great job at adapting it to fit more happy, jovial scenes and also the darker ones as well. The change in the music allowed the audience to better understand that the energy and atmosphere in the movie were shifting. So I think overall the music really helped us as an audience feel the tone and atmosphere and mood that the movie captured.
I'm not sure if this movie is a classic within the Black community, but I do know, especially at my high school, everyone had to watch this movie. So let me give you a little cultural context and historical context about this film. This film is set in Spain during their civil war from 1936 to 1939 before World War II. It was a fight between the nationalists, or the rebels, and the Republicans. It was a coup by the military under General Francisco Franco to overthrow Spain's Republican government. The aristocracy, the military, and the church opposed the Republic and joined forces. You can see this within the movie as the captain and his soldiers fight the forces, who are also known as the Republicans, in the woods in guerrilla warfare. Also, in the first scene, when he hosts his dinner party, we see as the camera pans around the table a priest, the doctor, and many high-class citizens and military officials who supports the captain's plan. During this time, it's a period of struggle for the nation and is reflected through the constant battles and death among those fighting, and is also personified through Ophelia as she struggles with her own battles with the quest.